All right, we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, joined by Craig from Voices from the Left podcast. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, TJ. Thanks for having me.
Doing good. Doing good. Doing all right. It'll be just me today. John is with family because they love him on the Bush Line. So, he's with them. And so, joined by Craig, and we got a few topics we're going to discuss and just go on. I was just thinking, just for something just came to mind. Did you see that that RFK Jr. thing where he supposedly ate a dog?
I saw some random post or something, and I was like, "I'm okay, whatever." He ate a dog. I'm out. I can't. There's whatever, man. I'm out. I'm checking out of that.
Any chance you had to vote for RFK Jr.? Well, let me see if I can pull it up here. Let me see. Where is it here?
The brainworm story was enough for me.
The brainworm story was so wild, wasn't it, man?
Yeah,
that was some wild shit.
I was out after that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like the easiest joke in the world. He's continuing the Kennedy tradition of having a hole in his brain. I mean, that's just like, of course, right? I mean, it's why not?
Yeah. Heck yeah.
So this is the picture in question.
Oh my goodness.
And this was posted in a Vanity Fair article. And I know, look at the joy on his face, man. Look at that shit. It's some psychotic shit. But let me see if I can pull up the he was asked about this on Fox News. Oh, let me see. Hold on. Pretty sure I pulled it up here. Oh, here we go. Let me know if you can hear this. I gotta make sure this is.
Okay.
Can you hear
stepping that? Off that topic for a moment, there's this Vanity Fair story. I want to give you an opportunity to address it. That has a picture of you holding up what looks like a carcass of a dog and pretending to take a bite out of it. It's getting a lot of attention. So I want to ask you if you want to explain that photo. Is that a cheap fake? Is that a real photo? What was going on there?
Now, that is a real photo. It's of me at a campfire in Patagonia on the Futalefu River eating a goat, which is what we eat down there. Vanity Fair said that they talked to veterinarians who assured them that it was a dog. They had an analysis that showed that it was in Korea, that it was in Korea eating a dog, and that statement is emblematic of the entire article, the lack of journalistic standards throughout that article.
Okay. I'm glad we gave you the opportunity to address that. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
There's so much to say about this. There's so much to say. My first thought upon seeing this, and so my first thought upon seeing this was, after the Kristi Noem thing, I would have bet you everything I own we would never get a weirder dog-based political scandal. But I'll be damned if I'd have lost that bet. I forgot about the strangeness of RFK Jr.
It's so weird.
Just
so weird.
I know. I also love how Martha McCallum clearly did not believe him. Where at the end she's like, "All right, glad we let you address that. Now we're gonna move on." Like, if you say so, buddy, sure thing. And I posted this video on my TikTok account, which is Power is Taken Not Given on TikTok, by the way. If you guys don't follow it, you should. But and I got a ton of RFK Jr. bots. The video is just getting flooded with RFK bots. But the point they're making is decent. The one that said, well, listen, what you eat is just culturally determined. Like, eating a dog is, if you really think about it, like, morally no different than eating a pig, really. Like, why is it okay to eat one and not the other? Yeah, culturally that's true. But they're like, well, people eat dogs in lots of other countries. Like, yeah, I got that, but he's running for president in this one. Like, that's why it's weird, because culturally now people don't see dogs as animals you eat. They see them as domestic animals you have in your house and have play with your kids. And so like there's no axiomatic or fundamental morality, something wrong with eating a dog as opposed to anything else. But if you want to get votes from people who treat dogs like children, that picture may come back to bite you.
Totally.
Oh God, that is so We got. This sounds like something the band Mayhem would do. I don't know that band. Are you familiar with them, Craig?
I am not. No,
I'm not. Yeah, I'm sure that was a great reference, though. Although I'm afraid I can't address it directly. But yeah, RFK Jr. Also, one thing it's weird to me because being someone who follows politics all the time. But I saw a lot of people comment, just like, "Wow, I'd never heard him talk before." Yeah, that's how RFK Jr. talks, and that's how he's talked as far as I've known. I remember him like 20 years ago. He sounded the same, and this is just something I say too when people talk about Biden. Oh my God, we got to talk about Biden. I can't. Oh, we will. But about Biden and how they'll try to deflect and say that his brain is not actually cottage cheese. It's just the fact that he has a stutter. He has like, no, listen. That's not it. That's not a stutter. That's his brain falling apart right in front of us. And also, like, let's be real here, folks. Public speaking is a huge part of the job. If you're president of the United States, you need to be good at it. You need to be like, in fact, it's a big part of politics. 90% of politics is just talking to crowds of people. So if you can't get through 3 sentences without losing your train of thought or stumbling over yourself, maybe this job ain't for you. Maybe it's not. Like, I'm sorry. That's just how it is. Let's see. Okay. All right. Let's go to the first one here. While we're on Biden now, we might as well hop onto it. So,
sure.
All right. What do we do with a problem like Joe Biden? What do we do? This is what the Democrats are facing an interesting position here, because if you guys have seen like all the polls that came out, I like, by the way, after Biden's debate, how people tried to spin it saying, well, actually, Biden's got a bump in the polls, like, a day after. Yeah, okay, no, let's see. And as time has gone on, of course, he's lost points in polls. National polls, like I saw there was one, it was like Trump 49, Biden 43. It's really, really bad. And with the whole debate performance thing, a lot of people are saying that, well, he had a bad night in that first debate, and he's really got a hammer it on the second night. And my first thought is, do we know a second debate's going to happen? Because I got to tell you, if I were Donald Trump, no way in hell I'm doing a second debate. Like you couldn't possibly get me to do a second debate if I was Donald Trump. I would say something like, minutes after the debate was over, folks, the debate's called off. We're not doing this. Like you guys saw what just happened here. Doing this debate would be a waste of time. It'd be incredibly cruel. I'm not going to put myself, my opponent, or the American people through something like that ever again. And no one could argue with him. No one. So Biden may not get the chance to, redeem himself in a second debate. And also, folks, what we saw during that debate wasn't a guy who had an off night, a guy who just, didn't prepare long enough. He prepared 7 days instead of 10 days. That's who he is. That's who he is. Like, and if you're familiar with how linear time works, you'll know that aging does not get better. He's not going to be better, 3 months from now. And the talk of replacing him, the obvious answer is Kamala Harris, right? If they were to do it. I don't know if they're going to do it or not. Most likely not. But if they were, what do you think they should do? If you were Biden's campaign manager, you sold your soul to Satan, and you were Biden's campaign manager, what would you do?
Oh, man. It's hard because I think a lot of those people are just fully Kool-Aid drinkers. So they would just keep running them out there regardless. And like, there's one thing I want to like address outside of this, like the fact that he had a bad performance in the debate, whatever the reason, that's not, that's a very small reason not to, I should say one more thing on a gigantic pile of reasons why Biden sucks. Right. So the fact that there's people, coming out from the Democratic Party saying, oh man, now we gotta get him out of there because he had that performance. It's like the red line wasn't genocide. The red line was a bad bait to performance. And that's the issue in general. If they think that Kamala is gonna be the one that could do it instead of him, like, I don't know. It really, to me, I mean, she's a cop, which is a no-go for me, but like there's plenty of liberals that love that shit. So, but it's like, really, it doesn't really matter. They need to find the best person they think can beat Trump, because that's what they've stated their goal is the entire time. Right.
Yeah,
that's what they want. Clearly, what they want. And they'll say anything and do pretty much anything they can to get it, from what I can tell.
So about the red line thing, like the red line isn't genocide. The red line is a bad debate. I would say it's not that the red line was a bad debate. It was a red line of now we don't think he can beat Trump. I think that's because I think they thought, but the night before the debate is like, oh yeah, with everything, he still could beat Trump. Now that he exposed himself and now his confidence is low, that's the actual red line where they don't think he can actually win. And so it was never about morality. Yeah, that was it was. But it's interesting you said I had a discussion with people about this last week about whether Biden will be replaced or not. My money would be on him not being replaced, just because that seems
I think he will.
I just don't know. It's just it's not, because I agree with you that it's not necessarily the who. I don't think that it really matters who you run against Trump. I think that everyone has a pretty much equal shot. I think it is the how that's the big deal, because this has never happened before. We've never had a situation where we're 6 months before an election and the presumptive nominee has lost the confidence of the party. That has never happened before. Right. in modern history or American history that I can think of in general. And so the process of selecting a nominee is already done. We've already done that. We've already had the primaries, and the political nerds will tell you that, well, technically, the people didn't vote for the primary. Okay, I know this is kind of new. This is like 60 years old. Back in the past, they would have. Not every state had primaries. Some did, but they didn't really matter. Like, what mattered was the actual convention where the delegates, cast their ballots first. So the party picked who that's the funny thing too, that I remember this kind of weighing on my shoulders in 2016 and 2020. The Democratic Party is under no obligation to put the candidate forward who wins the most. They actually aren't. They aren't. Like, they can pick the candidate they want.
Yeah.
It wouldn't go over well with the voters, but technically they could. So I was like, man, what if Bernie wins and they fuck him over? But he didn't win, so it didn't matter at the end. But yet the part about getting the new one, that would be interesting, because Kamala Harris seems to be like the only one who could actually do it in my estimation, and not because I think she has like a much better shot than anybody else, but the important part would be the money. Because people who have already donated to the Biden-Harris ticket, Kamala could keep all of that money.
Yeah.
Someone else would have to start over.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah, it's interesting. And something you said made me think about the fact that, so you said, they didn't really have primaries this year. Well, that's kind of normal. I mean, they still have primaries, but almost always, like every party, no matter who's the president is, if they're eligible for another term, that's who the party picks, the incumbent, right? The idea that they should have had primaries because they could have had someone else besides Biden win it, like, that was never going to happen. That was never going to happen. They had primaries, and not just because it's this version of the neoliberalism. It's because that's how it always operates. Not that it shouldn't be changed, but like, that's just how they do it, right? And so, and I do like I do appreciate that Harris, if she, was put forth as the nominee, if Biden suspends his campaign, would get his money. Like, that is unfortunately the place we're in the United States with the way campaign financing works, right? Not just that she gets the money, but also that it's a shitload of money, because
so much money.
It's totally untethered from any morality or any logical, like, the campaign donations is just insane.
Yeah, that's the first thing I would change if I were emperor for 10 minutes of the United States. I'd change the campaign finance laws. It's nonsense. And you're right. Yeah, so it wasn't out of character for them to just like assume Biden would be the nominee since he was the incumbent. That's how it always is. Like, I can think. I mean, there's the only times it was like up for question or something was like Carter. Back in 1980, because Ted Kennedy was going to run against him. That's the only time I can think when that was even like discussed. No one ever thought about that. And so yeah, I wasn't surprised that Biden was like. But what does surprise me though is like with Biden's case in particular. Now, the number one criticism for Joe Biden from anybody was, hey, is this guy does he have what it takes to A, survive for 5 more years, and B, survive the rigors of the fucking presidency of the United States? I mean, we're not asking him to be, an assistant principal here. Like, this is a tough job. And is he going to be able to do that? So knowing this, I have to wonder why the hell they scheduled this debate at all. I really, that perplexes me.
Yeah.
Because like what it's coming out of the woodwork now, people are like, oh yeah, this kind of happens with him every now and then. He's not like this every day, but like every third day, he's kind of like this. Now, if I knew this, I would never schedule him for a debate, because it's not like people would have blamed him for saying, yeah, I don't feel like debating Donald Trump. I mean, how much kickback you going to get from that? But it's
everyone would be like, it's pointless to even talk to him.
Yeah. So, like, not only did he debate Trump, but he asked for this debate. This is why it's been a while now, so I'm kind of unloading like a week's worth of anger on this. There's that. I've been so pissed off at like resistance libs after this, saying that, well, for the first thing they say is, well, no, Biden actually won the debate because Trump lied with everything he said. It's like, people, I need you to understand something real, like right away. Political debates are not honesty competitions. That's not what they are. Okay. I hate to break this to you. So say what?
I was just going to say, they never have been. It's always been rhetoric fueled nonsense.
It's like, since when has honesty been something that politicians are known for? Like, that's not what this is about. Like, debates are 100% style and maybe 10% substance. Like, that's all it is. So you could lie with every statement you make and win a debate. You could also tell the truth with every statement you make and still win, because what you say doesn't matter nearly as much as how you say it. I'm sorry, like, you may wish it was something else, but I'm operating in the world as it is, not as I'd like it to be. So if you know this, and you know that Joe Biden has trouble keeping his train of thought, stumbles over his words, ends up walking right into his opponent's wheelhouse when making a point, you knew this before you scheduled the debate. So going up there and saying that, oh, well, Trump actually, no, that's not how this is. This is not how it works. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, and this is the earliest I think there's ever been a presidential debate in an election year. They usually happen after the conventions, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And like, now more than ever, there was zero reason to do that, because there's no one that watched that debate that was like, I'm not sure who I'm going to vote for. Right. Like, that's the idea of a debate, right? Like, to have people make articulate points, even though it's always rhetoric nowadays. But like, that's the point, right? You have a debate to see which candidate stands, where on which issue. And then the idea is that will help you make an informed decision, right? That's the, like, the idealist view of what they're for. But against Trump, it's useless, because one, he's going to outright lie in addition to the rhetoric, right? Like, he's just going to make shit up that's just wild. And so it doesn't matter what you say. And you just make him, you don't make yourself look better by standing up there and debating him. I don't think, because he just lies about everything. Like, I happened to watch the debate, which is the first one I've watched in years. And I was just like, this is amazing nonsense. Like, just out of control.
So I think I'm going to disagree with you on both points there, oddly enough. This is all right at first, but so only half on the first one. So when you said that no one's watching the debate, and so I guess, because I agree that I don't think there were a lot of people watching the debate saying, who should I vote for, Trump or Biden? I don't think that happened. No, I think that is a extremely small portion of the population. I do think there's a portion of people who are like leaning Biden and saying, okay, and not necessarily like they've said, no, I'm not voting for Trump, not happening. But then they saw what they saw last week. It's like, okay, look, I'm not going to get out of bed and vote for that guy. That's not happening. I think that's what were the damage. But I don't think he lost, people to Trump. I don't think that's a large percent of the population. But I do think he definitely lost people who said, no, I just can't do it. I'm sorry. That it would be irresponsible of me to vote for this guy as president.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's the damage that happened with Trump. Now, as far as being a waste of time to debate Trump, I agree that it is a waste of time because, like, well, especially now because of what happened. But beating, like, I don't buy the argument that Trump is some sort of, unbeatable force in debates. And my primary reason for that is that's exactly what Biden did 4 years ago. Because Biden debated Trump twice. And I went back and checked the polls because the CNN poll for last week's debate, it was 67% said Trump won, 33% said Biden won. And first off, I have got to talk to that 33%. Like, what the hell were you guys watching? There's no way you could possibly think Biden won that debate. But the first debate, the polls were like, it was like 59-41 for Biden. And the second one was like, it wasn't 100%. It was like 49-31 Biden. So beating Trump is possible. Like, it is. And Biden, and Biden, here's the thing too. Like, any way you cut this, it's Joe Biden's fault. Like, there's no way around this because Joe Biden scheduled the debate. He invited Trump to the debate. He set the time, he set the date, he set the rules, he set everything up, and Trump accepted all of Biden's conditions and still kicked his ass. I'm sorry. There's no way. Like, Trump, it's not as if Trump is some sort of political unknown quantity. Trump has been the same person every day for the last 8 years. You knew what to expect. Like, Trump did his job. All Biden had to do was give a C- performance. And I think he could have locked down the election. I do. I think that if he'd have just gone out there and been show that, I got all my marbles, he'd have been fine. But now he's upended everything. And I will lose my mind if I hear another person say, oh, yeah, his debate team really let him down. Fuck his advisors. Get the fuck out of here. Like, you guys need to stop babying the most powerful man on earth. You got to stop doing that. Like, he's the president of the United States. The buck stops with him. It doesn't stop with his advisors. I can't believe like the insanity I've been hearing from people this last week.
Yeah, it was wild. And, the idea that there was a winner, that there's winners and losers of debates, especially that one. Like, Trump won by default almost just because of how bad Biden looked. But like, really, it's just the capitalist class that ends up winning regardless. So
oh, they were going to win either way. That's true. Yeah, there was no that's true. Let's see what Tweedledee says here. Why can't we just rig the election, hide all the evidence, and pay off all the judges like the last time? It's not like the Republicans can stop us. Listen, I've been saying this for a long time. I have been saying this exact same thing, that like, people who keep saying, oh, well, the Democrats just, they cheated all the election. I just roll with this. Like, yeah, that's right. We did. I did 50. I did 50 mail-in ballots myself and everything. And you guys are too dumb to stop me. And it's how they don't believe this shit because of the work they actually put into this. And it's like the old saying goes, like, if elections really didn't matter, they wouldn't spend billions of dollars on this shit. Like, so it's like, it's kind of absurd. Oh boy,
that's hilarious. Though.
It is. It's just funny stuff. That debate was wild, though. That was so we live streamed the debate here on our account, and with Nick Powers. Do you know him? Do you follow him by any chance?
I don't think so. No.
Oh, okay, great
account.
The
list though.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, but we just like the stuff Biden did was do you remember the time? They gave him like 5 layups and he blew them all. They asked him about abortion. I was like, okay, there's no way he's gonna flub the abortion question. That's the biggest, the biggest weapon in your arsenal. And he starts off talking about abortion. And by the end of his his response, he's about just like that poor girl who was killed by an illegal immigrant. And you went to her funeral. I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
what's going on here?
Unreal. And that one's an easy one. All he had to do was get up there and say, yep, the Supreme Court hosed us. And, the conservative legal project was behind it. We didn't do what we should have done as Democrats to codify it. But now we have to try and fix it. Like, that's all he had to say. right? And he couldn't even do that.
And watching that, if he falls apart like that in a 90-minute debate against one of the dumbest human beings on the planet, you're telling me he's like representing our country in foreign relations and stuff, and like see, I just like that is, oh God.
Yeah.
And
I saw a snippet of an article from Axios, which I don't know anything about Axios in particular, so don't flame me if they're a bunch of assholes. But all I know is that there were some aides from the Biden camp that told Axios that Biden is usually good from 10:30 to 4, from 10:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. But then after that, it's a crapshoot on any given day, basically, on what you're going to get. And it's like, the point of that is, someone astutely pointed out, well, it's a good thing you don't have to be president after 4:30 at night, right? And it's like,
yeah,
that's so true, because you're the fucking president. You could get a call at 2 a.m. that some just god awful shit has happened, and you're going to be expected to be on camera within like an hour and reassuring people that live in the United States that everything's going to be okay, right? Like, if you like that right there is enough to be like, okay, he's not fit now, if that's the case, let alone to run another 4 years, right? Like,
yeah. Also, I mean, if you knew this as his advisor, why would actually the first time I heard the debate was at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'm like, why?
Yeah,
why
I thought that was super late too.
And that was before I saw the performance. I was like, I don't want to stay up till 11 p.m. and I'm half Biden's age. That is absolute insanity. And that's a great point about, because I heard that too. That, well, actually, before 4 p.m. he's good to go. Like, okay, who the fuck cares? Like that doesn't matter. Yeah. And it's just I don't understand. I don't get it at all. And how much of just American democracy is held by people's ego? Because like I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I genuinely don't. I don't know where they're going to go with this. And here's the thing too. This is why I'm still leaning that they're just going to stick it out with Biden. And because Biden will need they can't force him. He'll need to voluntarily step down before they do anything. And I don't think he will. But also, if he decides, okay, for the good of the nation, I'm going to admit that I no longer have the critical faculties to, run for this office and guide the nation for the next 4 years. I appreciate everyone's support. I've done my best that I can over my term, but now I'm going to fully endorse my vice president, Kamala Harris, and, throughout the entire. Now, if that happens, that's going to bring up more questions too. Like, okay, so if you're not fit to be president in January of next year, why are you fit now? Why don't you just resign? Why are you still sticking around? So there's no logical way for this to work. The only logical way it would work is if he says, okay, I'm resigning effective immediately. Harris is the vice president and she's going to run as the incumbent or whatever, which is going to make the party look even worse than it already does. I'm having a hard time thinking how the Democrats win, or the presidency at least. Yeah.
Well, it's and I think I saw yesterday at some point, Biden had told the staffers or donors or something on a call that he was under no circumstances dropping out of the race or whatever. Yeah. And I couldn't help think that it reminded me a lot of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, God.
She refused not to retire, which was her prerogative, right? While Obama was president. And so that he could replace him with somebody that wasn't the worst of the worst possible lawyers to put on the Supreme Court, right? And so her arrogance is reflected in Biden when I look at him talking about that, like, and how horrible of a decision that was by her and her hubris to be like, no, I can still do this job. And it's like, you cost the whole country Roe v. Wade when you did that.
Yeah.
I see that same shit in Biden. So who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just Now that you mentioned that, I think one thing, I think the only thing that could save this is if Biden does die. If Biden dies of a heart attack tomorrow morning, it might be the best thing that could possibly happen to Democrats, because then they're forced into it and no one can blame them. Like, okay, well, all right, this is how it's going to be. So, but knowing our luck, that's not going to happen, and we'll have. I don't know. The only thing that I'm holding on to that might, because I mean, look, I'll admit weirder things have happened. Like Trump still might lose. Like Trump is a horrible candidate. Like he's awful and he's super unpopular. And honestly, I got to tell you, like if Biden won this election, it would still be less surprising to me than Trump winning in 2016. Like that would still actually be, I can't imagine. Yeah, I can still see a universe where Biden wins. I couldn't imagine Trump winning in 2016. So
nobody could, which is why it happened.
Why he won in the first place. Exactly. That's what I was telling people, because like honestly, before last week, I was 100% confident Biden was still going to win, not off of his merits, but because of how bad Trump was and how
so much.
Because the Democrats are doing really well in the congressional races and the Senate races, like way higher than Biden. I thought that the bottom of the ticket would carry the top for a weird way. But now it's toss up. I couldn't begin to tell you. I don't know. Red Scare Claire said that's literally sundowning. I know, man. It's just it's. I don't understand how Biden being honest and resigning due to old age would look bad for the party. Because here's when you remember when the Republicans took 18 votes to get a Speaker of the House? Remember when that happened a couple years back? And how they were the laughing stock of the nation. And people were like, oh, this is not a serious party. They don't have any idea how to govern. What they've done with Biden shows they don't know how to govern. Like it shows that they knew this person was actually hiding cognitive difficulties and they tried to hide it from us. So what they're doing now is they're trying to pretend like they're putting on this facade. We know it's a lie, but this is what they have to do. It's like, no, he's actually not in cognitive decline. He actually had a bad night. With him resigning, it's admitting he's in cognitive decline and that they have been lying. That's why I think the party looks mad, because now like everyone thinks they're lying, but they haven't said it. Yeah, that's right. We've just been covering this up, like committing essentially like national security fraud for like 4 years now, or at least a year or two now. That's why I think it makes the party look weak, because all right, we've been lying to you for 4 years. Now we're ready for you to trust us all over again. I just don't think that's going to work. That's how what do you think, Craig?
Yeah, no, I think they don't look good no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Even if Biden wins, they still don't look good. Right? Because
there's no way they look good, but I think they can look worse. There's varying degrees of worse.
For sure. They can look worse than they do right now. And part of that would be admitting to their, like, while it would be good probably to admit for the long term, like it's very short term harm for them, because they just have egg all over their face then, right? Like it's bonkers.
Yeah, it's bad time. And one last thing on this is what did I think this the other day? I can't remember where, but I saw this it was like this meeting of politicians in Indiana and everything. And I just remember seeing this, and then I saw the Trump thing, and then I saw a Marjorie Taylor Greene clip. It was like a whole bunch of things that happened in a row. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like every one of us should just run for an office. Like every one of us, just anywhere. Like it doesn't matter. Like run for governor, run for your school board, run for the mayor, run for dog catcher. Who gives a fuck? Like, why not? Like apparently they will let anybody be a politician. So, I just like, this is just convincing me more and more that there's nothing stopping us. We all need to do this as quickly as possible.
Yeah. There's no means test to be a politician. Like to have the kind of control that even a school board member has is there's no means testing. Let me put it a different way. There's more means testing to be able to get WIC or to get an EBT card or anything like that you need to live to survive than there is to be a fucking politician. Like it's totally fucking ass backwards. Anybody can be a fucking politician.
I saw something about this the other day where, like in Congress, you have like Congress, they don't make a shitload of money, but they're like the real money they make is, outside of their actual salary. But congressmen make, I don't know, like $170,000 a year, something like that, 150, somewhere in that range. But there's also a lot of perks that come with that kind of prestigious position.
Yeah.
And they get per diem. I forget how much the per diem is, but they also have an expense account. So, for decent reasons, you have to pay for travel, you have to pay for lodging and for food, stuff like that. And I saw sometimes I was like, they don't need to turn in receipts. They just need to like write down, oh, I spent $90 at this restaurant. I spent $400 on travel. They don't need to provide the receipts. And I was like, really? And someone was talking about exactly what you mentioned, how they got
backwards.
It's so backwards. And so, like, if you're a regular person and you want to get some sort of assistance, you need to have like a CIA background check on everything about you. And even people at regular jobs, like, try that at work at your expense account by not turning in receipts and everything. They are crossing every T and dotting every I. But you get in Congress, there you go. Have at it.
Taxpayer money, whatever, we can spend it. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that Happy Meal that you bought for your kids, that was $500.
No, so when I started working as a legislative intern at my association at the Indiana General Assembly. I thought, okay, one day I may look at this and run for, state house or state senate and go ahead. And then I looked up how much they made, and this like state houses and state senate, they make like $28,000 a year. It's like that's what they get paid, and that is a travesty. Like it is, and because I realize, okay, I see why they do this, because the only people who can take these jobs are people who already have money. That's it. There's no way a regular person is going to run for an office that pays $28,000 a year, because you got to feed yourself and your family and shit. So it's just barred from regular ass people, and that's kind of a shame.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Speaking of regular ass people, let's get to the topic that you recommended. I had heard a little bit about this, but let's go into it. So this is going to be about remote work, and for one agency in particular, and this is Dell. And so I heard about the stat about half the workers, but I didn't read like the rules that Dell had made. So Dell has restructured their work from home policy. And so remote and flexible work schedules aren't new to Dell. Dell led many companies in its work from home benefits even before the coronavirus pandemic hit. Yet Dell is making a notable change in how it views its remote workers. As recently reported by Business Insider, Dell's new remote work policy will categorize its workers into two main groups: remote and hybrid. Hybrid workers must agree to come into an approved office at least 39 days each quarter. Excuse me. This is roughly the equivalent of 3 days per week. Remote workers do not have to come into an approved office at all. However, remote workers aren't eligible for promotion or to change jobs within the company. This appears to be a complete 180 from where Dell was less than 2 years ago, when Michael Dell blogged about how if you are counting on forced hours spent in a traditional office to create collaboration and provide a feeling of belonging within your organization, you're doing it wrong. So the deal, I know it's funny, they completely went back on that. So the deal that Dell struck with their employees was, okay, you guys can do remote work, but if you do full-time remote work, you're going to be stationary. You're not going to be able to get promoted, and you can't change jobs within the company. But you can do like a hybrid schedule where you come into the office 3 days a week, do remote work 2 days a week, and then you can get promoted. And with those stipulations, half of the Dell employees still decided to do remote work and say, yeah, it's worth it to me to do that. So what were your thoughts on that, Craig, when you saw that?
When I saw, before I even read the article, I just saw the headline, my initial gut reaction was eat shit, Dell. Like that was the first thing that came out of my mouth. I was just like, this classic capitalist asshole shit, right? And then I read the article, and in there it talks about how they were expecting people to come into the office where there wasn't a location anymore. They like closed locations on people, and then said, well, you can't get promoted unless you come to the office. And it's like, motherfucker, the closest office is 500 miles away. Like, I can't come into the office. Like, and so, that kind of nonsense is, while that's a small percentage compared to the rest of them. Like, it's just that line of thinking from executives that just, they obviously didn't think it through all the way to the end. And because that they rarely do. They just, well, what can get us the most benefit today? And we'll do the opposite tomorrow if that gives us more benefit tomorrow. But like, the employees, like they took a stand, right? Not that Dell should be commended for not firing them, but they didn't get fired. So that's good, because I've seen companies do that horse shit before. But like, I think what this underlying thing is here, and we've been seeing it since 2020, is a growing class consciousness. I don't think it's growing fast enough, unfortunately, but it's growing, right? And people realize, hey, the idea that I need that carrot on the stick, of a promotion to, come into the office for no fucking reason, like, piss off. Like, there's zero reason for it. Most of the people that work office jobs, I gotta believe it's at least 75% would have zero reason to ever come into an office, as long as they have what they need to do the job at home. Like, what possible reason is there? Right. And I don't buy the, camaraderie and team building nonsense. Like, that's not, coming into the office doesn't build camaraderie. Going out with drinks afterwards, with the people you actually like at the job, that builds camaraderie. Right. But like, being in the office for team building and whatever other bullshit some clown says it's all horseshit.
So when I saw this, looking at the different stipulations that they had, and it said, all right, honestly, I would prefer the hybrid schedule. That's just me, but I get how Nywer would, because I just like to get out every once in a while. I just kind of like, but also, I don't have any like responsibilities outside of me. It's not like I have kids or anything like that, or I got like stuff I got to go work with. So that'd be completely different. But also, I could easily imagine why someone would give up the. Also, I'm very ambitious, so a lot of people just like, hey, they're completely fine with the job they have, and even if you aren't angling to get like more responsibility or more money to raise in your organization, you know how much money you're saving by not driving, by just not driving into work. Yeah, like the time and money that you were saving by not commuting, not, like having to buy lunch because you forgot to pack it, not spending money on work clothes. I mean, there's so much money you're saving by not going to the office that I can easily see how that would be worth not getting that promotion.
Yeah, totally. And, it's also better for the environment, because you don't have everybody driving their cars, right? Like, unless you live in a big city in the United States, that's the only places that have public transportation from a suburb really to a big city, right? I don't even have it where I live. Like, I would have to drive. But like, it's better all around. Your quality of life is better. Like, if you need to go to the office to do part of your job, it might not even need to happen every day. Like, go once a week if if you can get everything you need to get done that day that you physically need to be in the office for, then that's the only reason to be in the office. Like, from what I can tell. Now, if you have to sort mail or stuff like that where you physically can't do the job from home, like, I get it. You're going to need to be in the office. Like, that's, I'm not saying that everybody can work from home, right? but it's just interesting to me. And I've, like, years ago when the whole actually at the beginning of 2020, I should say, when the work from home thing happened because of COVID, like, I had people I was responsible for, and I was like, I didn't like it as a person who was responsible for other people on a team, because I knew my boss was going to come down on me and be like, hey, what are the people doing while they're at home? Right. So I had to have dumb shit. Like, every day I had a meeting with the whole team for like 5 minutes at the beginning of the day, just to keep people honest the best I could. right? Like, but but I got over that shit in a hurry. And I was just like, whatever, just get the work done. I don't care. Like, as long as my boss doesn't come and bother me, I don't give a shit. Like, and part of the reason why executives and all these assholes that say it's terrible don't like it is because they don't have any control, right? They can't stand that you're going to get paid to let your dog out, right? And let them in. They can't stand that you might go to the kitchen and get an extra cup of coffee that you wouldn't get at the office, right? If you have to pay for coffee at your office or whatever, like that's the type of control shit, and they just automatically assume everyone's fucking off. Well, that's because they don't do shit, right? Like executives in general, like they don't do anything. And I know it because I sat in meeting after meeting after meeting.
Oh my God.
And listen to them talk, and none of them did they did fuck all ever.
Man, that's a great point. That is a great point. I just remember, I can't remember how old I was when I figured this out, that one consistent throughout my entire life is the more money I make, the less I work. It is like an 100%. Absolute stone cold fact of life that I work less now than I've ever worked in my life, and I make a hell of a lot more than I've ever in my life. And that's why people want to get. It's not just about the more money. More money is a big incentive, but your job's easier. Except for now, your responsibility grows. That's part of taking the bigger position, the bigger pay. So you're not just getting paid to work harder. You're getting paid because, well, hey, now if someone fucks up, it's your job. It's your fault, whether you did it or not. And fine, that's worth money. And so, but this also goes into why executives don't like it, because it actually makes them work a little more, or at least like their stress level raises. Because exactly what you said, they can't micromanage anymore. They have to trust their employees to get the job done. And you should. Otherwise, you should have hired them. Like, then that's still your fault. Like, if you have people who, because I've always said what I've always wanted in life, like whenever like I had superiors or supervisors and they're asking me, hey, what can we do to make, like, look, I just want to be left alone. If I'm getting the job done, I just don't want people to bother me. And that's worked. That's worked for then again, you actually have to be competent, like, because people don't want to be checking on you all the time, but people have to. And so that's what they're worried about. And it's funny you mentioned about some jobs cannot be remote work. They just can't. That's just not how the world is. And I remember Elon Musk was doing this interview where he was really mad about remote work jobs. He was really mad. He thought he was like, you guys need to get down off your goddamn moral high horse with your work from home bullshit, because people who work at my factories, they can't work from home. Why should you get to work from home? And I saw all these people, because true. If you're assembling vehicles, you can't work from home. That's true. If you're a plumber, you can't work from home. But a lot of people who do these manual tactile labor jobs are like, actually, we don't mind it because there's less people on the road now. It's just like, it actually makes the commute easier when you have half the people not clogging up. It's like, we know this is what we signed up for. We're not trying to work from home because you can't. I can't unclog your sink from my house. But having fewer people out there actually benefits us. And so it's just so funny seeing people, or like the bosses, get really mad about someone having some sort of freedom because they have a guilty conscience, because they know they're not working. So then they know damn well that other people can take advantage of that too. But they can, because of something you talked about earlier, that this frustrating lack of class consciousness. We aren't even close to we've been trying our best to try to get this together. There's going to be a long time before we actually get this figured out. And the fact that society is so atomized all the time doesn't help us out a lot, but it's what allows stuff like this to happen. Oh, one more thing. You are talking about, I can't remember what you said, but you mentioned about firing people. In the article I just read then, they mentioned something I hadn't thought of. That another theory that some Dell employees have about why they instituted this light push to put people back in the office was so that they were hoping people would quit. There was a way to reduce revenue by saying, hey, it'll look bad if we just start firing people. So now if we change the incentive structure and saying, okay, well, you can't get promoted now, people might quit, and that'll save them revenue. I thought that was a pretty good theory on this.
I think someone's onto something there, because that's the exact type of thing that an executive team and an HR team would come up with. as a way to save money through attrition, but have it look like it's not attrition.
Yep.
Right? And just be like, they can wipe their hands clean, right? It's a PR move at some point, right? They'd rather take the hit for having the bad PR that the article gave than they would take the hit for just firing people, because that would look worse, I think.
Yeah.
But
I thought that was a genius observation, because exactly what you said. This is perfectly crafted to save the company money, to get rid of employees, and still come out not looking like the bad guy, or at least not as bad as you would have looked if they pulled like a Tesla, where they fired 1,000 people, overnight, and they couldn't. Did you see that story?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I heard about it at least.
Yeah, Tesla fired. It was thousands. Like, it was at least, I can't remember how. I want to say 10,000. That seems high, but
via email, right?
It was. Yeah.
I think it went out at like 2 a.m. or something, and everybody woke up and they were fired.
Yeah, it happened in the middle of the night, and they sent an email. So people who didn't check their email in the morning didn't even know. They showed up to work with their key cards, and their key card didn't work. And they're like, okay. And they called security and like, oh no, I'm sorry, you've been fired. And it's just like, Jesus, like, So they're like, okay, we're not going to do that. We're not going to pull an Elon here. And we're going to just make it a little less comfortable to work here, and hopefully people will quit. And I like that theory. It's kind of genius, because it is something that a company would do. But I definitely see why 50% chose to stay. And they said that if you chose to do full-time at-home work, you couldn't get promoted and you couldn't get a different job in the company, but you could always leave the company. So it actually works perfectly. Like this, that's what they did.
Yeah. Well, I think one other reason why we have the rhetoric coming out of executives and CEOs' mouths about how it's not good for people to work from home is because they're concerned that if they're not treating people right, like they know they're doing people wrong outside of their work from home policy, right? They either don't pay enough or they put too much work on people. Like some of them, I'm sure, think that at some point, right? And so they're like, oh fuck, people are going to realize how much better they could have it somewhere else, right? And they're going to end up leaving, right? And they don't want turnover costs a lot of money, right? Recruiting, because it's not, they have a huge HR bill, especially giant companies like Dell. Not that they can't afford it, but it's like that costs them more money, more turnover. It's insane.
It's true. It's true. Work culture, man. Am I right?
Yeah.
We love it, don't we, folks?
Yeah. Well, and one more point about the class consciousness. So like, I think it's specifically an issue in the United States in particular. Like, we can just this yesterday, like, I guess it would be today, just because it was in France. So they're that much farther ahead of us. But like, they were out in the streets yesterday, like thousands of people after the right wingers won some of the like snap elections. Like, they're out there protesting the fact that they won those elections, right? Like, that doesn't happen here ever.
No.
Like, yeah, we have people protesting and they should be protesting, but like, they aren't protesting for that specific reason, right? On a class consciousness level, right? They're protesting on just a different thing, like a personal stand that they want to take, right? Or a personal issue that's important to them. They're not doing it, which is fine. Like I said, people should be doing that. And the stuff that happens in France just happened in France, today, plus the stuff that's been going on with protesting over there for the last couple of years, with the farmers spraying shit all over the government buildings and stuff. Like, that's all class consciousness stuff. They know what they're doing over there. I guess that's to be expected from the country that invented the guillotine. But
right, man. Liberté, égalité, fraternité. France gets too much shit for being cowards because of World War II. No, they look. They had one time when they folded under pressure, but trust me, the French have a long track record of way better than us when it comes to standing up for the common folk. I remember when I was in college. I'm pretty sure I was in college, and I remember seeing this news story about how the French government wanted to change like the retirement age from like 63 to 64 or something. And I remember reading that and I was like, okay, that makes sense. I remember now I was not a leftist or anything back then. I was fairly conservative actually back when I was in my college days, believe it or not. But I was like, all right, 63 doesn't seem super old to me. So, working I mean, like my dad is roughly 63 and I think he could easily, he not that time. He wasn't 63 then, but 63 didn't seem like ancient. And I was like, sure. Yeah, I can see working at 64. It doesn't seem insane. And the next day, the French burned the country down. They were out in what? And I was like, what? Why are they so upset about this? Now I get it. Now I was like, yeah, I applaud those folks. And they have this reaction every time the government tries to just, because they know what's happening. They know, we fought too hard to have these rights for the working class. You're not going to have our elderly working themselves to death. We're putting a stop to this immediately. And I appreciate that. I wish we had more of that because, like you said, we have our protests. Our protests are nothing new to us. But that was such a great point that you said, is that our protests are rarely for like broad working class issues. It's like for specific issues, like specific issues like that are worth protesting, obviously, like gender issues or race issues or education issues, like whatever it happens to be, but just broad working class stuff like what happened with the UAW stuff last year or whatever. Where it didn't matter what your political stripe was. It didn't matter what your skin color was, what your gender was. Us auto workers are banding together for a better contract. You don't see a lot of that. And which we really need, which is like, I was so, proud of like what Sean Fain did in putting that together and getting a great result with massive support from the American people, just with a lot of goodwill. And God, I wish we could have more of that. It's a little easier to do when it's the same industry, but we need to expand it to like all workers in general. And we got a tough road ahead of us, but that's what we have to do if we have any hope of this thing surviving.
Definitely. Well, and a lot of, some of the criticisms of labor in general for the last, maybe it's forever, but specifically probably the last like 30 or 40 years is that they only reduce it to class, which is a Marxist thing, which is fine. That's a starting point, right? Reducing it to class. But to understand, like really understand the tyranny of the capitalist class, you have to dig into the intersectionality of it, right? And the labor movement wasn't doing that. They were just saying, we're going to get this contract because this is what's best for the majority of the people. But you had people from the intersectional groups that, whether it was people who wanted more trans rights on the job or more disability rights on the job or whatever it was, more rights for women on the job, whatever it was, those were getting pushed aside by labor for a long time. And it gave a lot of people, a bad taste about labor. And like I said, you start at class consciousness and reduce it to that, but then you have to learn from people in all of the working class, right? Not just the people that are in your specific community, right?
Right.
Just listen to people who identify differently than you, whether it's gender, race, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, nationality, whatever it is, right? Because that's how we're going to make real systemic change, right? Short of, decolonization and completely overthrowing capital and imperialism and settler colonialism, which is what we should all be striving for. But that's for a different episode. But if you want systemic change, you have to understand what everybody's needs are, right? And it's not just class.
Yes. Yeah. And this is something that we've done this a long time in the show, but a lot of people seem to be under the impression that, like class issues and like intersectionality are like mutually exclusive, that you can only focus on one or the other. And like, this is I see this a lot when I see Black people and like a queer issue comes up or trans issue comes up, and they say, well, no, listen, I'm not interested in worrying about the queer community until America fixes the problem with the black community. I say, listen, you can't look at it that way. Like there are queer black people too. What about them? Yes, fuck them. Just leave them to the side. That's not how this works. Like until we're all free, none of us are free. And, separating ourselves into these blocks and saying we're only worrying about this, this, and this. I hate to sound cliche, but that's what the capitalists want.
That's exactly what they want. Yeah,
I know. It's it's been an incredible. In fact, that's honestly, I'm not telling you anything new, but that's honestly one of the major reasons that the United States doesn't have as strong of an idea of class consciousness as a lot of other places, because specifically the race issue that. It became really apparent to the capitalist class around the late 1800s and early 1900s that, black and white people were beginning to figure out that, oh, okay, we have a lot more in common as workers, despite our background than we have with, our bosses who are making us work 6 days a week and 12 hours a day. Right. And that's when they realize that they can kind of, offer a bargain to, Italians and Irish, people. It's like, oh, well, we're going to classify you as white now. And then the real problem are going to be the black folk. And it worked. It worked. They took the deal. And now I always joke about this and how it's weird to me that Irish people weren't considered white. I will die thinking that it's funny that Irish people of all people weren't considered white. And Italians, I get why. Okay, I can see that, but fucking, that's why I consider Italians the bigger traitors on this. It's like, come on, folks, like, you know what was going on here. Hold on. Someone said, I'm wondering what you guys' opinion is on this. Should specific language be demanded if it will cause a backlash, or should policy be prioritized even if language is coded or hidden? I don't know what the heck what we were talking about. But did we mention anything about language, Craig? I
don't recall, and I'm a little fuzzy on the question if they're talking about like which language someone should speak, whether it's English or Spanish or whatever, or about the words people use for things.
I think that's what he's talking about. Like, so I'll go first on this. This is actually one of my complaints about leftists in general, is that we have very bad messaging. We're horrible at it. It's laughably bad. And a lot of times leftist dialogue is unfortunately like almost necessarily academic, where we take, concepts that work in the classroom and use it word for word in everyday conversation. And it's off-putting. Or it gives the wrong impression. And so I think the right has a specific advantage with this in that, right-wing, dialogue is it's childish. It's just, it's like, well, obviously there are only two genders. It's basic, science. Yeah, it's basic science. That's the problem. It's like, if you want to introduce the concept of gender to a 7-year-old, nothing wrong with that. It's like, yeah, there are boys and girls, and that's how gender works. Yeah, that's a basic overview of it, but life isn't basic. Or that's about basic economics. Well, supply and demand. Okay, yeah, that's basic economics, but it gets a little more. If you want to live in the real world, you can't stop there. So I think that leftists need to do better. That's what I try to do. I try to make it as conversational as possible, so you don't lose people in like the miasma and the weeds of how complicated these things can be. Because, I mean, you can have a right winger up there saying stuff like, oh, I don't want a man in a dress teaching my kids, and that'll rile people up. But, you get on here and you start talking about, top marginal tax rates and quantitative easing. You're going to lose everybody. Everybody's going to be gone. And so, you just have to find a way to speak in a way. This is why Trump works, because, right wingers think like children and Trump speaks like a child. And I'm not saying we need to do that, but we need to find a way to be more relatable. Like, what do you think, Greg?
Yeah. So, and Kyle said he was referring to union contracts. And so I think it's similar to a law that was in California that I think just got repealed within the last few years. I can't remember, but in California, there was a law that said you cannot discriminate against anyone in the workplace. in your hiring practices, in anything. It was just, that was the law.
Oh, that's a bad law.
And you know, the idea was that, they put that in place as opposed to having some kind of affirmative action. And they may have had both, I don't recall, but like on the surface, that's probably, from the high level, like academic standpoint, like you said, you can't discriminate, period. The problem is they don't put any guardrails in to track it, to stop, to make sure people aren't discriminating, right? They do none of those things to make sure that a law like that actually can function, right? And like, the idea was to capture, to cast a wide net, right? Rather than put in specific language for people, which I think is what Kyle might be referring to in union contracts, possibly. I don't know, but if I'm wrong, Kyle, tell me to shut up.
Well,
but to me, the idea is that they need to be doing things that help everyone, right? And you aren't going to know what helps everyone until you talk to everyone, right? As much as possible, right?
Well, what I was thinking I see the law, but if it's just as general as that you can never discriminate, like sometimes you need to discriminate like on age or something, like if the job doesn't work or something, if you don't do something like that. And so airline pilots or something, I don't want an 80-year-old airline pilot. Hold on. What is going back to the union contract, laws, policy, ignoring intersectional identities. Some people demand inclusive language or specific types of languages to be used as a signal to advertise a victory. I need the example. I need to see like what that would look like. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Sorry. Kyle.
Yeah. So I need a specific or something like that.
Much help.
Yeah.
I will say though, like, because I used to negotiate union contracts years ago. I was a bargaining team member for 4 years. I was in SEIU, and I bargained contracts. I handled grievances. I was on an arbitration committee. I was a worksite leader at the place I worked at. So I was like fully in on it. And all of our contracts, like the one that was there when I started working there, and then the subsequent ones I actually bargained in the following years, none of them had what he's describing, where you put in where there's language in an actual contract that calls things out. Now, if you're going to message it out to people after the fact, or after you have an agreement with management and you think it's good and you want the membership to ratify it, that's where you need to use some of that language, I think, where you can make sure people understand what it means, right? Because if you've ever read a union contract, there's all kinds of gobbledygook legalese in there. And it's like, there was stuff I had to read 3 or 4 times, a whole paragraph where I was like, what the fuck is this actually saying? Right. And it's like that messaging after the fact, if you want the membership to ratify it, because sometimes you don't, because their management's just being terrible. But like that can help for sure to help a contract get ratified. If you understand what language to use when you're going to tell people like, hey, we got this thing for FMLA. We got this thing for attendance. We got this thing for, like, I'm drawing a blank, dress code, shit like that. Right. Or stipends for getting, if you're in a maintenance trade, or, something you got to be on your feet all the time. Housekeepers, kitchen staff, like getting language in a contract that makes sure that people can get the PPE that they need to do their jobs. Right.
Like it. All right. So we're gonna. Oh, actually, CEO asked a good question here. CEO asked, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, or Christmas? Which one has to go? So this leads right into our last category of the night, where we're talking about people being proud to be an American. And so first off, Christmas isn't going anywhere. It's the best holiday in human history, as far as I'm concerned. Everyone loves some Christmas, and so that one's safe. It's going to be 4th of July, because we were joking about this is like the last 4th of July. I mean, it could be. We might have a brand new nation that no one wants to live in by next 4th of July. So we may not even get the chance to. So John and I did. It was for Juneteenth. And with Juneteenth, we have a show on Wednesday we do that's like an hour long between the two of us, and we just banter really back and forth. And then we have like our 2-hour show, won't be 2 hours like the two of us, but our 2-hour show on Thursday. And we started talking about Juneteenth and how, well, first, it was first started off with John said, "Oh, hey, did you have to work today?" I said, "Oh, no." And John said, "Good, because I didn't want to have an awkward conversation when I had to work." When I didn't work on Juneteenth, but you did, which was pretty funny. But then we were talking about how Juneteenth is a brand new holiday, and so there aren't any like national, traditions around the holiday.
Sure.
What? Yeah. So on Halloween you wear the outfits. Christmas you have the presents. Thanksgiving you meet with the family, watch football. What do you do on Juneteenth? You're just off, and no one really has customs that they do. And so then we started ranking holidays, and because I mentioned that you have your top tier holidays, and I said there are only 4 top tier holidays. There's Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, 4th of July, and then we like Christmas gets its own category. Like Christmas is the S tier holiday, and then below it you have like Thanksgiving, New Year's, 4th of July, and then you've got like your holidays where you get the day off, and but it's not to like the traveling level and everything, like Memorial Day, Martin Luther King Day, stuff like that. And then you have Halloween was a weird one for us because Halloween is a really big deal, but you don't get the day off. It was a fun episode. We're just ranking all the holidays and everything.
Awesome.
Hold on, he says, I agree on 4th of July. Yeah, 4th of July's got to go.
Yeah.
You don't need to address this, but here's an example from earlier: DEI or ESG initiatives. Even though currently it is something that causes a backlash, some people demand that language as a win. I mean, I feel like, so I see what you're saying, and you have more experience with this than I do, Craig, but I feel like you could implement that stuff without using specific terms. Like the terms aren't necessarily what's important. Well, the terms are important, but the specific nomenclature aren't necessarily important. But then again, why bother? Because people are gonna talk about it anyway. Like you could couch DEI into a different phrase. They're still gonna call it DEI. So I guess why not?
Yeah. The holiday thing, definitely 4th of July has got to go. And I do love Halloween.
Halloween's great.
And as far as Juneteenth goes, and it's not having any traditions yet.
Yeah. Well, not national, at least. I'm sure like some pockets of the country. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think one good one to start would be to break people out of prison.
Yeah.
That'd be a good start for a tradition.
That would be good. I love it.
Just go get some people out of jail. Just, it'd be great.
Bring the kids.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Let's see. All right. Let's talk about our great and wonderful nation here. Let's see. So I love looking at stuff like this. I check this all the time. It's kind of like a tradition for me every 4th of July to come check this. So, did I pull the right one? Yeah. Okay, good. I'll make sure I got the right year all right. American pride has taken a hit in recent years, and a new Gallup report shows it's not rebounding. Gallup's June survey, published on Tuesday, shows 67% of folks are extremely or very proud to be an American. A pretty high number, higher than I would have guessed. I got to say, 67 is pretty big. By comparison, that figure ranged from 81 to 91% between 2001 and 2016. I bet 2002, if they did this in June, like 2002 would have been through the roof. Because after 9/11, I mean, for those of you who were around for that was a wild time with 9/11. It was a wild fucking time. So, like, President Bush had like a 90% approval rating after 9/11. Like, which is something insane to think about that anybody could get a 90. Because I can tell you, if like we had a 9/11 attack happen today, if it would have happened 5 years ago, at any time or under Obama, it would not hit 90%, the approval rating. It would not. You would have like 40% of the country saying this attack is Joe Biden's fault. He needs to be sent to the gulag. There's no way it would hit 90%. It's like a different universe. And it's just 4 percentage points higher than the low of 63% in 2020. Another 18% of Americans say they are moderately proud. The good news, just 5% say they aren't proud at all. And this one says, I knew Craig would laugh at that. To me, this kind of goes together into a story about people just being more dissatisfied with government and more unhappy with what they think the American democracy should be. People are still generally proud to be Americans, and she's less worried about dented national pride than the eroding trust in government. I mean, I think those kind of go hand in hand. And someone, Brinson right here, they found an abysmal level of trust in the government is down to 20%. So can you have pride in a nation when you don't trust its institutions? Just 21% of those 18 to 34 said they were extremely proud, compared with 40% of people 35 to 54. And 54% of those 55 and older. So, all right, I would like to get your opinion on this thing, Craig, with people's pride in being an American dropping over the years. And I remember, so I grew up, like a Christian fundamentalist and everything, and which is the group that you imagine is going to be like skyrocketing. It's like, oh, the Lee Greenwood, wrap yourself in the flag type folks. Yeah, but right. Even growing up in that environment, which is essentially, I had a friend of mine referred to American conservative evangelicalism. It's not a religion as much as it is what do you call it? It's a civic religion. It's a civic religion that kind of worships, like a conservative Christian version of the United States and capitalism and white supremacy. Yep. But I remember I had a pastor who would always say that you shouldn't say you're proud to be an American because, like, what did that have to do with you? You just happen to be born here. What pride could you possibly take in the fact that you were born within some imaginary lines? But what he said was that you should be thankful to be an American, which is a problematic statement in and of itself, but it would make more sense. Like, it actually makes more sense than saying you're proud. But anyway, what do you think about this in general?
I mean,
Greg?
It's funny because if you would have asked me 10 years ago, my answer would have been completely different than what I'm about to say. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are a lot of Americans who have yet to break free from the propaganda that we've been fed our entire lives about how America is a bastion of freedom. Mm-hmm. Because that's simply not true. It's just not. Yes. Do we have individual rights? Can I drive across the border to another state without people bothering me about it? Sure. Mm-hmm. But that's not, you can do that in a lot of countries, right? I don't have the freedom to have any job I want because my healthcare is tied to my job, right? So I have to have a job that I might not like to have healthcare, right? And that's not just me. That applies to everybody in the United States, right? Yep. And so that we're just not as free as people think we are, right? And the idea that America is all over the globe, spreading freedom and looking out for quote unquote America's best interest in the region, like that's all horseshit. That's imperialist bullshit. America goes around the globe to exploit resources and people, especially in the global south, right? They just tried to do it in Bolivia again for the second time in 5 years because Bolivia has the world's largest lithium deposit. And what do we need lithium for? We don't have to use lithium for it, but we do. It's batteries for electric vehicles and cell phones and other stuff too. But those are the two main things, right? So it's like, I just think there's some people that don't understand that what the United States does. And they're saying how they're going all over the place to look out for America's interest. No, they're looking out to get resources for the capitalist class to use to make them richer while exploiting everyone else in the process. So there's people that just haven't come to that level of awareness yet about what's actually happening.
Yeah. I feel like you can get away with spreading this propaganda and having people swallow it if you either have people who are, comfortable and prosperous and living lives where, of relative affluence across the board, and you're terrorizing the globe, or, you know, maybe the life isn't going so great for them, but they can look on the TV and say, oh, we're doing good across country. If you're doing neither, it's going to be kind of hard for people to buy into that. Like they need to have something to point to. And we don't have anything to point to. Like, you know, World War II was a long time ago. Okay. People, that only, you know, carries you so far. And what I write down here from what you said here. Oh yeah. So I remember years ago, I was when I first, you know, started moving on to leftism, I was telling a friend of mine about this and how I'm just being real here. Like, you know, the left has, like, the reality has a left-wing bias. That's just how this works. You know, that when you actually see the world for what it is, like, you can't help but, if you're honest with yourself, you're going to be a leftist. And so, or a monster, one or the other. I guess you could do that. But and I was talking about, you know, kind of like Noam Chomsky's thing, where he goes through the list of every president since Eisenhower and how they've all committed a war crime.
War crimes.
Yeah. And, you know, talking about this and how, you know, you don't got to buy into the propaganda. And he says, well, listen, you know, I'm still proud to be an American. He says, I still believe it's the greatest country in the history of the world. I said, what does that mean? What the hell does that mean?
Right.
And he didn't have an answer because there is no answer. Like it's a thought terminating cliche to say this is the greatest country it's ever lived. There are no, like, greatness is not a quantifiable property. There are no units of greatness. Like, anybody could say this is the great, because if you want to say that, you know, this is the country with the most powerful military in human history, okay. You want to say it's the country with the most money, okay. I mean, you can say that, but saying greatest doesn't make any sense. It's not.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, it's a useless statement, and we've been couching ourselves behind this for the better part of 60 years now. When World War II ended, and we were the last remaining, you know, global superpower, and we kind of, you know, grew to the, you know, globe bestriding hegemon that we become, you know, over the last few decades. And we took this to say, okay, well, I guess that, you know, God has blessed this country, and, you know, we are the recipients of a grand vision from the founding fathers 200 years ago, and there's something special and unique about us. And more people, even more and more conservatives, are beginning to figure it out. Conservatives will still say this because they have to, but you talk to them, and it's funny to me whenever they talk about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment will always get me, because I think you can make, there are plenty of decent arguments you can make for citizens having the right to bear arms. There are decent arguments to make on this. They always make the worst ones. They always make the worst ones possible.
Yeah.
Always, it's so dumb. And one thing they love to say is that, well, you know, I need to have any firearm I want with zero restrictions and zero regulations. In case the government becomes tyrannical, then we can rise up against it. It's like, homie, the government is already tyrannical. And like, you already know this because you guys say it all the time. How many times have they said Joe Biden is a dictator? You know, the Democrats in the Senate, they are enacting these restrictive laws on the country. It's like, so you live in a country that has 800 military bases around the globe, and we enforce our will on the global south and on, you know, destitute populations at the barrel of a gun, like you said, so we can extract, you know, lithium from Bolivia, rare earth minerals from Afghanistan, or, you know, just all around the globe, just to make just to enrich these multinational corporations. You haven't done a thing about it. A cop can kill you for looking at them the wrong way at any time, and you haven't done anything about it. The government allows, we talked about these campaign finance laws to allow legalized bribery for elections. So corporations, so corporations can pay politicians to allow them to put microplastics in your food. Like, the government is so tyrannical, it's slowly turning your children into styrofoam, and you haven't done a goddamn thing about it. So miss me with this. I need my weapons to overthrow a tyrannical government. The tyranny's here, and you haven't done a damn thing.
Totally. Well, and I don't remember who said it. It was somewhere on the internet in the last few weeks, but like, they were, the point was that people saying that America is now fascist or is becoming fascist are, the more people that start saying it are the ones that it hasn't never affected them before. So they never thought it was, right?
Yeah.
And so those are going to be predominantly white people, in particular white males, right? But like, there's lots of people that have thought the USA has been tyrannical since its existence, right? Like, it was a country built, founded as a tax shelter, right? And built on genocide and slavery. So, it's been tyrannical since its inception and it hasn't stopped. They do it everywhere. Like, it's, do I have a level of comfort that other people don't in the United States? Yes. That's not those people's fault though. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
this whole idea. And that's the thing about like the capitalist class and their bootlickers. It's always about, you don't have what I have because you don't deserve it. Everyone deserves fucking food, shelter, water, healthcare, right? Medicine. Like, everyone deserves that. It doesn't matter who you are, right? And, until we have, a society in the United States in particular where that happens, where we don't have people being put in prison for being without a house, which just became legal now.
Yep.
Like, until that stops, it's hard to be proud to be an American, right? Like, I think, I don't know.
Yeah. Another glorious six. I saw a great post right before we joined that for the rest of our lives, every summer is going to be ruined by a statement starting off like in a 6-3 decision from the Supreme Court. Like, it's going to happen, for the next 20 years or something like that. But yeah, it's difficult to sit back and just say, oh yeah, this is great. This is fantastic. And especially if you haven't experienced it before. I forgot to check the comments. People said Mark says, it's not just trusting the government, it's trusting mainstream press and trusting the church. Institutions have taken a hit. So yeah. And for the most part, that's good. For the most part, I would say, because just having it's weird. It's a weird double-edged sword, because it's good to be skeptical. Like, you don't just believe things because somebody says it. That's bullshit. But it got into weird areas, like with, COVID and stuff, when like people who knew what they were talking about, like, so people were like, oh, all these virologists say that, COVID is real, but I've done my own research and I don't think it is. Like, no, you didn't do research. I'm sorry. Like, unless you actually had like a live virus in front of you under a microscope, and you wouldn't recognize it if you saw it. So at a certain point, we all take people's word for it. Like, when you're driving your vehicle, you're about to cross a bridge, you're trusting that the people who built the bridge, the government inspector, that this bridge is going to hold your car. Like, you're not going to stop, pull over your car and check the credentials of whoever verified this bridge. When you go eat, you have to have that kind of trust in institutions, for society to be. That's just how this works, And when people start veering off from this, and it's like, you see this a lot with the flat earth folks. They're like, oh, well, you're just going to believe a bunch of fucking nerds in lab coats to tell you the earth is flat or the earth is round. And we're paying for it in a lot of ways there. So I encourage a healthy skepticism, for a lot of reasons, but be reasonable, folks. Be reasonable in everything. We have actual cases where Americans, particularly Black Americans, tried to fight back against the USA in self-defense. Look, this is, I'm sorry, I'm going on course here, but this is something that I talk about all the time, that you ever notice that when you learn history, you learn about a lot of great men, which is a weird way to teach history too, like the great man theory of history, that, history is changed by the course of these exceptional individuals and not by, the forces of markets and societies and civilization. But they focus on like Napoleon or George Washington, Julius Caesar, like all these people. A lot of these people have something very interesting in common. They all fought and killed for what they wanted. And it's very consistent. You know where you don't see that? You don't see it with black people. Like how many characters or historical figures did you learn about in history class in high school that was a black person who took up arms to solve a problem and was venerated? You don't see a lot of it. And in fact, you don't see a lot of it outside of like white Christian men in general. You don't. What you will see, you'll see a lot of Mahatma Gandhis. You'll see a lot of Susan B. Anthony. You'll see a lot of Martin Luther King. Now, with those people, they sanitize that as well, because the whole version we have of these folks as, they like Martin Luther King just politely asked for the racism to stop, which is, nonsense. Like it's like a lot more complicated than that. But if you're like a white Christian man, you pick up a weapon and stand a post. If you're anyone else, you pick up a sign and stand in a field. That's where you're limited to. So it was really interesting how that's so you're right, Kyle. And go ahead, sorry.
To Kyle's point about that, like all we have to do is look at Malcolm X.
Yeah.
King, Fred Hampton, George Jackson, right?
Yeah, Nat Turner.
Yeah.
It's like these people are viewed as villains.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. They're essentially labeled terrorists by the US government, right? And then, as for sure with MLK and Malcolm X and Fred Hampton, the government killed them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, that is what's happening. And they don't teach you that part of it in school, right? They teach you the part you said where King asked nicely for racism to stop. Like, no, like that's what they teach you. It's like, what? No,
it's just wild that's the current. That's just like that's what most people think. Like even people who aren't like actively racist or anything. That's what they were taught as kids. And it's like, oh, no one had thought of that. No one said, hey, folks, how about we stop the racism? And it worked. It just worked. They're like, oh, okay, that's just it is wild how it's taught that way, and everyone just buys it. Even with white people, a lot of white people killed by police. No one apparently cares. That's interesting. So whenever this is one of my favorite retorts whenever people talk about Black Lives Matter as so you're saying only Black Lives Matter and everything. Well, it's actually all lives matter and everything. And all the question you had to ask is, okay, what has the all lives matter movement done to stop police brutality? Because if you're saying that the problem is that it just says black and not all, like show me how many protests the all lives matter movement does whenever a white person is killed by a cop. Doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. Black Lives Matter does. When you guys remember that? I don't remember the guy's name, but he was a guy who was in a hotel in the hallway, like laying on the ground, and the cops still lit him up. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. It was a white guy, and he was in the hallway, and the cops had their weapons on him, and they told him to lay on the ground, like flat on his stomach, arms to the side, and they were telling him like move your left arm to your hip or something, and he like moved his right arm instead. They shot him, and it was a white guy. I didn't see All Lives Matter protesting that. I didn't see it.
Right.
So it seems like All Lives Matter is just a cudgel against Black Lives Matter. It doesn't seem like you actually care about people's lives at all. So it's true.
Well, one thing you want to tell like people need to understand is that cops aren't supposed to shoot guilty people either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not what they're supposed to do to them.
Yeah. The punishment for, the punishment for speeding is not death. I even if you're an asshole, I'm sorry. I get this is in fact, the punishment for murder isn't death by a cop. That's not the cop's job. The cop's job isn't to carry out the sentence of execution. That's not how this shit works. Like you exist to hold someone until it's time for their trial. That's your job. That's it. It's not it's so weird too that it's hard for Americans to grasp the fact that police forces around the country, not like a lot of them don't act like ours. It's very weird for them to understand. Like you ever watch a British TV show and none of the cops have guns? Like they have a special unit of like armed police. It's so weird to see it from an American's perspective. It's like, yeah, actually you can. Now, I guess it might be a little more difficult in the United States with guns being everywhere. I guess that might be a little trickier. Yeah.
Part of it, right? And like Canada and England, as far as I know, neither one of those countries have the right to bear arms. It doesn't mean you can't have guns. It means you can't, like, it means you don't have the right target. It's a privilege. Yeah, it's a privilege, like getting a driver's license, more so than it is just walking into a store and buying one.
Right? Yeah. Hold on, let me look at this real quick. What this means. Do you hear my cat? He's yelling. He's a big baby. I know, Wolfie. I know, buddy. Okay, so there's this French film I saw years ago. It's called La Haine. And I just looked up what I couldn't remember what La Haine meant in English. It means hatred. But it's about these three kids in some ghetto in Paris, or I think it doesn't matter, some French city. And they're three poor kids, and they're all from like minority groups. Like there's a black kid and an Arab kid and a Jewish kid or something. And they're ne'er-do-wells, doing kid shit, petty crimes here and there. And then, like, a quarter of the way through the movie, one of them finds a gun. And you would think, like, watching the movie, it's so weird watching it as an American. It's like they pulled Excalibur out of a stone or something. Like, it was like this life-changing event. They ran the whole block because they had one firearm. Like, it was so weird to see as an American. Like, I don't know, like, why, how it played in France, but seeing it as American, I was like, a gun? Like, they have a gun, and like they were untouchable. And so, like, that's actually good. That's actually good. I hate to say it, that's actually good because less violence, and policing would be simpler. It would be simpler if you didn't have to worry about every single person packing heat whenever you dealt with them. So yeah, it is wild. Hold on. I think back in 2015, the number one cause of death among all men was being killed by the police. Apparently, that can't be right. That can't be right. Really?
I'd be surprised if it wasn't cancer.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, it can't, because like I feel like it's got to be like tens of thousands. Yeah, like tens of thousands of people die in car accidents alone. I don't know, but anyway. But yeah, so this is actually, want to wrap it up with the American thing, is that I am in total agreement with you and probably everyone listening that this founding myth we have that the United States is somehow exceptional. I mean, it's unique. Of course it's unique, but every country is unique. Like, that's not, everyone's unique in their own way. But I do think that there is some utility here in people actually being proud of the nation they live in, or having pride in it, because it does help to like mobilize people. Because if everyone hates their country, why bother fighting for it? And this is something, I don't know if I asked you this before, because I know we went up before, because I've asked this to a couple people. What does it mean to love your country? Have we ever talked about that? I don't know.
Think we've talked
okay,
about
great.
Yeah.
So this is something like, when people say they love the United States, what the hell does that mean? Like what does it mean when you say that you love the country? So it could mean one of a few things. It could mean you love, the land itself, which I don't know, like the Great Plains, the amber waves of grain, the purple mountains majesty. Look, there's a lot of beautiful locations, but I don't think that's usually what people mean when they say they love the country. But you also have, the government, and it can't be that. Almost nobody loves the government. Like you'd be hard pressed to find people who's like, I love our government structure. That's not most folks. And then you have what I think a lot of people mean when they say they love the country, especially conservatives. They love the mythology. They love this mythical version of the United States where, we had these scrappy, slave owners and aristocrats and quasi-aristocrats in the 13 colonies who, with the help of God and, brotherly love, got together and founded the greatest nation in the world. Yeah. And we've continued that great tradition. Cheesy as it sounds, a lot of people buy it. A lot of people believe it. Now we have this beautiful melting pot where everyone gets along and we're a force for good for the nation. That's what I think most people mean when they say they love the country. But what I think we can push is that when you say you love your country, the fourth option, you love the people. You just love the people of the nation, which is funny. A lot of people in the other group, they don't love the people. It is funny because they when they say they love America, they mean, and they love certain people in America. There's a lot of people they don't love. They certainly don't love us. You know, like you and me don't make the cut when they say that they love the country. They don't like immigrant populations. They don't like people who don't make enough money. They don't like the homeless. They don't like teachers unions. There's a whole bunch of people they don't love. Bunch of people. It's a small percentage that they actually love. But I think that if we push that, it can be useful, because one thing I say that, like, one thing that I talk about, our messaging on the left gets muddled sometimes and actually kind of off-putting, is that, like, I, for example, use like Antifa with Black Bloc. I'm sorry. You look like bad guy. I'm sorry. Yeah, you showed up dressed like ninjas. People are gonna think, I don't know. I gotta say, you show up to a rally looking like Darth Vader. People are gonna think you're the bad guy. So, like, I'm not saying we need to dress, like Apollo Creed and coming out in star-bangled, shorts and a top hat and everything. I'm not saying that, but it does bother me that the right has commandeered stuff that, like, loving the country. And although I hate to say this, but even like church, even though I don't like anything to do with church at all, that's still a lot of people that go. And a lot of good people. And so it's like, if we could, family values somehow they got and everything. So as far as like with agitprop, like, I think this would have some uses. What do you think? Yeah,
I mean, I think with the people that say it and they love the things you're talking about and don't love specific groups or all of every other group that's not them, like, those people are enjoying their privilege. Right.
Yes.
That's what they're enjoying. That's what they love. They love their privilege. And, back within the last 10 years for sure, but you used to see things popping up, usually from people in the South, say things like, we want so-and-so to be elected, some Republican douche. We need him to be elected because we need to take our country back.
Yeah.
And it's like, I started hearing that a lot, and I'm like, I don't know what those fuckers mean. Our country's not going anywhere, right? And so I asked a friend of mine, I'm like, what are they talking about? And he's like, they're concerned that their privilege is being taken away. And it was in response to, I think, gender neutral bathrooms in North Carolina, where I used to see it a lot. And it's like, their privilege, not their rights, are being taken away. It's privilege being taken away, not rights. That's the difference, right? There's a difference between it, and they see it as their rights being attacked, but because they don't understand that it's their privilege that is putting them in that position. Right. Like, and a lot of times it doesn't even rise to the level of privilege. It's like mild discomfort. It's just like like stuff that doesn't even affect them, and they just lose their minds over this. Like, like, you ever hear conservative stuff is like, well, I don't like the fact that I'm being forced to use pronouns. And I love when people say, like, okay, give me an example when you run across someone in the wild who has forced you to use a pronoun. Now, I'm not talking about someone you found online. I'm talking about someone you had no choice but to interact with, like someone you work with, someone who like teaches at your school or something. How many times did that happen over the past year? If it's more than one, you're looking for these people. Like, it doesn't, like, this shit doesn't even affect you. And you're making up a scenario in your mind and getting pissed off about it. That's no way to live. Like, how are you surviving like this? Yeah. They're not what I would say living, right? Like, they just have a constant level of anxiety, I think. That it's like, you just don't need that.
Oh, it's sad. But I think that one of the things that I like to do is, like, why I got into, doing social media in general was, spreading leftist message and trying to do it on like an everyman level as much as I possibly can. What I think is a reason a lot of us get into it, kind of stuck around for the community. It's fantastic. I love that shit. But Kyle commented here, sorry, all men 18 through 24. That makes more sense. That would make more sense. Yeah, I could see that. God, that is sad too. But all right. Gonna wrap things up here. Thank you so much for joining, Craig. It was a different type of episode we had today with just two folks, but hey, it worked pretty well, actually.
I'm glad to be here, man.
I was actually worried with only two people, it might be a super short episode, but we went an hour and a half. Like it's pretty much or an hour and 15 minutes, like slightly less. My math, hour and 45 minutes, only 15 minutes less than usual. Yeah, I can do math. One more thing. Here's the name of the study: risk of being killed by police of force in the United States by age, race, of it. Yeah, that. So when you broke it down by age, Kyle, that did make more sense. I was like, man, there's no way that everybody suffered from that. Yeah. But go ahead and toss it to Craig here. Where can the folks find your content, my friend?
So my podcast is called Voices from the Left. That can be found anywhere podcasts are found. I also upload the audio to YouTube. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Instagram at dystopian_grift, on Blue Sky also, and Threads. And you can also find some of my content on the Anti-Capitalist Podcast Network. That we just did a live stream on Sunday for Palestine for that. And we've got, it's a brand new project. So we've got some content up for that too. So that's on YouTube specifically. And also I have an Instagram page for that. So.
Fantastic. I appreciate it, man. I don't know if you mentioned, did you mention sub rights for capitalists? I remember.
I didn't. I should though. Yeah.
Just like
yeah. So my backup Instagram account is sub rights for capitalists.
Oh God. I laughed my ass off when I saw that. That's so goddamn funny, but I appreciate it, man. We'll catch you.